You're in.
All right. We may actually want to come back to some of these. Now, as Mark mentioned, and Brad as well, when I teach and give presentations like this, I really want to do it from a perspective of helping you learn. And there is nothing more boring than sitting out on a lecture at 2:45 on a Tuesday afternoon where someone's droning on about a topic that you're not particularly excited about anyway, which I don't imagine. Did any of you wake up one morning and say, I want to go into sales today? Anyone? No show of hands?
Not
No.
as an accountant, no.
Okay. Well, I have yet to deliver this presentation or any presentation in front of a group of people that I have anyone that enthusiastically jumps up and down and says, this was my dream when I was 8 years old. It just doesn't happen. So we all kind of end up someplace that may feel just a little bit uncomfortable whenever you start thinking about selling and about self-promotion. And so today, my goal is for you to leave here with ideas and strategies that you will put to work. Because everything that I'm talking to you about today will make you money. And it'll make you money if you start today. There's a whole lot of strategies that people can teach you, like productivity or marketing or things like that, that they have an impact, but they may have an impact weeks or months from now. And today I'm giving you stuff that's going to have an impact tomorrow if you put it to work right now. So, with that being said, let's talk about where sometimes we get a little stuck or we feel a little stuck about explaining what we do. So, how about we start with doing just a quick round of introductions and y'all give me your best run at your 30-second commercial or your tagline. So let's just kind of all stretch our legs here, and you're all among friends. We can edit out the first part of this recording if it's really awful and start over again. That's the beauty of the interwebs. So who wants to jump in and get started? And I just want to know who you are, what you do, and, kind of give us your 30-second commercial. Mark Lucier, you want to go first?
Uh-oh.
Woohoo!
I am Mark Lucier. I have worked in investment bank as an investment banker probably for 25, pushing 30 years, but then struck off on my own last year. So I've worked at big banks, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, and small banks, a boutique up here in Connecticut, but then struck off on my own last year to focus on doing what I do with smaller companies and just trying to add some value and find clients, basically.
Okay.
So what I do, so I have been working with companies to help them sort of clarify their financing goals and understand what their constraints are, what drives their revenue, and then devising financing strategies for them and then connecting them with investors and lenders.
Okay.
For example, right now I'm working with a renewable energy developer, getting them ready to go out to potential buyers and investors. I've done the same with an early stage entertainment platform company, I guess you would call it. Again, just developing models, developing projections, helping them clarify their goals and what their revenue model is. And so those are examples.
Okay.
I had reached out to Mark and started talking with Mark Blackton because I am not a natural salesperson. You asked if people woke up one day and said, I want to go in sales. I'm even worse than that. I woke up one day and said I was going to be an engineer and then a financial analyst. And so I struggle with, conveying my message clearly, I think. And, and then that constrains my ability to find clients. And so that's kind of my story. So I'm here
Okay.
to try to learn how to communicate my value add more effectively.
Okay. So Mark, let me tell you, first of all, you have climbed a really big hill right here and right now by going first. And by being willing to be transparent and just put yourself out there. So let me tell you that the hardest thing you are going to face is what you just did. Okay? So I want you to think about how that felt, because that moment where you step out there and you tell your story for the first time, that's when you have done the hard thing. And from here on out, it gets easier.
I hope
See?
so. I hope so.
All
Yeah.
right.
I actually
Okay.
don't mind. I actually don't mind the getting up in front of a crowd and talking, but it's just, you know, I don't, you know, I want to improve how effective I am at what I communicate and how I communicate it.
And you know, the interesting thing, it's kind of like I can do math, but I probably can't do math like you can. And what you need to recognize is that there are skills and talents that you are uniquely gifted in that other people are not. And in doing the self-promotion aspect, this is something that people think you are born one day with the gift of gab or the ability to really promote yourself well. And it is a learned skill. And we're going to be talking about exactly how you learn it and how you get really good at it. Okay, so Ken Brown, what we're doing right now is everybody is doing their 30-second commercial, and we're going to kind of take a baseline of where we're at the beginning, and then you're going to get another shot at the end, and we're going to do this again. So you want to go second?
Sure. Sorry for the casual look. I've been doing work outside the house today. I've been a middle market CFO for manufacturing and distribution companies for, I don't know, 25 or 30 years. Retired in the fall, and recently received a request to do what you could either call fractional CFO or consulting work, a couple of days a week. Sort of interesting because I really wasn't looking for it, but I agreed to a day and a half a week for now.
Okay. All righty. So anything that you want to really express as being your talent or unique selling proposition, what makes you better than everybody else?
I've been a general middle market CFO, a lot of expertise in IT and HR, in addition to the finance side. And you know, at some point when we're open for questions, I have a general question for everyone.
Okay. All right. So how about you do me a favor and chat in? There's the message feature or the chat feature.
Sure.
Would you chat in your question right there so that we
Sure.
can make sure that we start assembling a parking lot? Because we are going to be very interactive and working together throughout this. So, okay. And I think you pronounced your name at the very beginning, but I probably missed it. So is it Gary? Gary?
Yep. Gary, that's right.
Gary.
You got it.
Yay. Okay.
Hey.
All right, Gary, you're number 3.
Cool. Thank you. So my name is Giri Giridharan from Accelerate CFO, providing strategic insights for technology and e-commerce businesses. I have worked in many technology companies as well as large global corporations, and bring that unique blend of experience for businesses to help them grow and make them profitable. I have sold a business in during the pandemic. I joke to people around saying that I sold in pajamas because it was pretty much late night, early morning calls to the Northern Hemisphere. And I enjoyed that experience, and I want to bring that to other businesses.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Dennis.
Okay, Breandan. Dennis Gluen. I'm a newly minted area president for Focus CFO as of March. And prior to that, I'd probably been 30 years in the healthcare industry, both as a CEO and CFO, and decided to do a career change. So that's why I am in the Focus CFO organization. I've been with Bang since the 90s, and was really in information services and technology, kind of in the finance and accounting world, back before healthcare.
Okay. All righty. Bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Palladino. I've worked for decades as a controller and at times as an interim CFO for manufacturing companies. Where I add value is I improve efficiencies in internal controls and in dashboard reporting. My expertise are in cost accounting, general accounting, financial planning and analysis, and with a specialty of implementing ERP systems and cost accounting systems. I've worked for various companies, not only that have been privately held, but also that have been private equity financed. The last company I worked for a fractional CFO, and that's how I was introduced to the field. And now that I'm searching for other opportunities, I'm looking at fractional work as a possibility.
Okay. So everybody, I want to call your attention to something. Bill just shared something that is a rock star characteristic within 30-second commercials. What did he do? I'm making you think.
Yeah, I think he highlighted his expertise, and that resonated with me.
But how did he highlight it?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
So when he highlighted it, what did he bring? What did he express what he accomplished by? Do you remember at the very beginning of his introduction, he shared the results statement of what it was he achieved within an organization. And then he went on to explain, and Gary, you did something similar as well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just want to call everybody's attention to that, because that is the key to having an effective 30-second commercial, is leading with results first, because that gets people excited and then they want to listen to you.
Got it. Got it.
So
Yeah.
Bill, you
Excellent.
get the gold star, and Gary, you're right up there with him. I mean, you're going the right direction. So, and we're all learning as we go here. So that was one of our first lessons that I want to make sure that we get out. All right. Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate that. You illustrated a point for me beautifully. Okay, Marcus, now you get to follow the tough act.
Yeah, let me get back to my mute button there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Marcus Vonker. I'm the Chief Development Officer here at Focus CFO. You know, we work with small to medium-sized businesses. Usually we're brought in because they're experiencing some type of growth, changes, or potentially a combination of both. The owners are normally frustrated that they don't have timely, accurate information, their sales are stagnant, or just overall worried about profitability. And when we join with their business, we work with their existing leadership team and typically are able to help with one of those, which allows the owner to really get back to doing the things they enjoy most, which is growing the business where they can provide the most value. So I'm not sure if that resonates with any type of clients or prospects anyone else has worked with here, but that's typically what we do.
Okay. So, Bill, you just got bumped for the gold star. Okay. What was great about Marcus's 30-second commercial? Aside from the fact that he was very polished with it.
Yes, he's done this before.
He spent some work on this.
Well, I wish I could say it was like a chat GPT, but really, Breandan, that comes directly from our playbook that Mr. Martin probably wrote years ago. So I'm literally working off of a script of our 30-second commercial.
Well, then Mr. Martin did a very good job in crafting it. Okay, let me ask this. How much of that 30-second commercial was actually talking about Marcus versus who Marcus served? If you had to, you all are, you're numbers people. Okay, so you're distributing the percentage. Was it 10% focused on customer, 50% focused, or 80% focused? I gave you 3 options.
I'll say 80.
Yep. Yeah. So one of your big lessons for today is people are walking around thinking about one person in the world, and it is not you. So leading with a 30-second commercial that is focused on you does not demonstrate that you're a relationship person. I mean, is anybody here really, really looking for transactions? I mean, are you just about getting a job and moving down the road without building a relationship? Anyone? Or do you are you in this business because you like actually helping people that need you and appreciate you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The thing about branding is the picture or image of who you are and how you do business. It is how you speak. It is how you present yourself. It is how you engage with the market. And if you think about building your personal and professional brand, the more you can reflect what it looks like to be about building relationships through what you do, the better. And leading with that first sentence that is who you are and what your name is immediately putting out that you're putting yourself first. So I like putting that at the very end. So for example, with my 30-second commercial, and that's where your storytelling begins, is with that initial 30-second infomercial. I lead with who I serve and who I specifically work with. So my hook statement to my elevator pitch is professionals go to school for anywhere from 4 to 10 years to practice their craft. There are no classes for them to sign up for that teach them how to secure an opportunity, win a client, or grow an existing relationship. They are taught how to do the work that they do. Yet in order to differentiate themselves, they have to learn how to sell and do it in an authentic and transparent way. My name is Breandan, and I work with professionals that want to stand out and look better than their competition by demonstrating authentic and transparent relationship building skills. And then I lead into how I do that. My 30-second commercial roughly is 27 seconds, but it's not about me, it's about you. And you want to paint a picture within your 30-second commercial or your elevator pitch or that story that helps someone raise their hands and say, you're talking to me. So that's where we want to make sure that we begin with our conversation. So, okay, now who have we not heard from on 30-second commercials? Because y'all are doing a great job of teaching my class for me. And I haven't even made it past the first slide. So we're on the right track. Okay, we haven't, or I know we haven't heard from Brad or from Mark. Who else have we not heard from? There's my dog. Kenshin is chiming in with her 30-second commercial.
I think that's everybody, isn't it?
Is that everybody? Okay. All right. Brad, is yours different? Let's hear your 30-second commercial.
I have different ones, so I'll do a different one than what Marcus did. So I would introduce myself as Brad Martin, and I'm with a company called Focus CFO. And our goal is to help small and medium-sized business owners gain full financial control over every aspect of their business and to create sustainable, transferable value in their business. So we have a team of, again, this is where it gets different. We have a team of 30 CFOs in Columbus. And as I get a chance to meet with business owners, one of the things I'm trying to figure out is whether or not that our solution is one that's good for them and which CFO on our team is the right one to work with them. And then I would immediately ask a question back to the person, because at that point I want to take control of the dialogue.
Mhm.
And you do that by asking questions.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent point. Okay, so very good job on the 30-second commercial. Did a great job of speaking to the benefits that he brings and what people are able to achieve or accomplish through working with him. Mark, are you ready to go?
I guess I can do this.
Okay, you can do this. And meanwhile,
I gotta
I'm
show
gonna
off to
switch
the-
my camera off for just a second and I gotta put it back up
I gotta
for
show off
Wi-Fi here.
to the coach here, but I work with small to mid-size business owners, and the value I bring to them is peace of mind in helping them understand the value of their business and the options to transition their business to either their family, their employees, or third parties.
Excellent.
That's it.
Speaking to results. Okay, great job on your 30-second commercial. Keep in mind, this is where it begins with how you're going to tell your story. And we want to talk today about where storytelling is going to fit. And the biggest thing that I want to make sure that you recognize is how you can use stories and examples for demonstrating the value of your service and why someone should work with you, helping your prospects kind of narrow in their mind about why you and why they want to work with you. It is a way to effectively stand above your competition without bad-mouthing your competition, because we all know that that's kind of bad form, but yet we do want to make sure that we sell ourselves effectively. You can help people overcome objections and see themselves in the transformation that you speak to, and understand that the biggest objections or obstacles that you ever have to overcome in working with someone is the 4 inches between their ears. In a lot of cases, we think that our competition is someone else, and oftentimes it is the fears, doubts, or insecurities of the people that you're talking to, and their ability to see themselves in your transformations. And stories help you achieve that. They also help you overcome inertia or status quo. People get stuck. There's just no way around that. And stories can help you with nudging someone over the edge. And also there is a technique that I want to share with you. Make sure, okay, somebody ping me about circle the wagons, because I want to make sure that we cover that today. I do not have a slide about it, but that is one of my favorite storytelling techniques that helps people with getting that prospect moving that might be getting just a little bit stuck. Okay, now let's talk about where stories fit. Because, you know, in essence, people think, well, I'm only going to tell my story at a couple of different spots. But the thing about stories is they are so powerful at helping people connect to you and why you are someone that they should build a relationship with. So it can be everywhere from a networking event, an initial prospect meeting, farther down in the funnel where you're brainstorming solutions. Because let me share a secret with you. People buy what they feel a sense of ownership in. Are y'all with me on that? If they feel that they are contributing to a solution that is custom designed for them, like if they look at it and they're like, that fits me perfectly, it's like a custom suit, they're going to be all in. And stories help you achieve that. They fit into marketing because people, we're visual. We like seeing examples. We like seeing the proof right in front of us of what something can bring. And marketing, There, it's powerful when you can start to share video examples, testimonials. Case studies are so incredibly powerful. Make sure y'all remind me to tell you about one of my clients that is in the risk management space, because they have got it going on with using case studies. That's almost their entire marketing effort is case studies. And then, of course, that very last piece, which is the testimonials or the social proof, because there's something that is called community that's a psychological trigger. And think about it like the Cool Kids Club. You remember when you were a kid? Did you ever have any friends that had those clubhouses that you wanted to hang out in and spend time with your friends because it was cool? Anybody but me? I had all kinds of friends that we had our secret hideout that we liked hanging out in. Well, that's community, and it starts from a very young age, and then it only grows as we age. And it's very powerful, and it's something that people often miss with their marketing and their sales effort. And I don't want you to miss it today, because some of these things that I'm sharing with you, these are like the secret weapons. If you think about a toolkit that is, okay, you remember who? Batman, the superhero. You know, Batman has those tool belts that has everything from like the throwing stars to the rappelling gear that can send him up the side of a 100-story building. You know, well, where stories fit is they are your tool belt. Okay, they cover just about the whole gamut. So you're going to love them. And I'm going to teach you how to craft effective stories today. The first thing I want you to think about with storytelling is it is your first opportunity to remove assumptions about who you are or what you do. So think about it. What are some of the assumptions that people might make about you that would not help advance a prospect as far as building know, like, and trust? Let's talk about this for a minute. So chime in. What are some assumptions that people have about you?
Well, in my case, I've done a lot of, it's all about financial analysis, financial structuring. So one of the assumptions people might make is I'm just sort of like an Excel nerd who can't relate what I'm doing to the bigger picture of the business. Might be.
Oh, that's a really good one. Okay. So that's an assumption that you want to remove. Okay. What are some others?
I don't know. I think one other assumption could be that this guy could be expensive. Like, hey, rather than recruiting an accountant, why pay a CFO? So, that could be another.
It's out of my budget.
Yeah, out of my budget. I'm talking of, I guess, from a New Zealand point of view, we've got thousands of SMEs, small medium enterprises, as opposed to large organizations. So their budgetary allocation for CFO probably would be pretty thin. And so, hey, can I afford this guy? It's probably one assumption.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Other assumptions that we have to battle against, Bill.
That because you're in the financial sphere, that you are effectively unproductive overhead.
Tell me more.
That you, as in your role as a financial executive, can add value and income and efficiency to the operations. You're not just putting numbers on a spreadsheet.
Okay. All right. We've got some excellent ones. How many of you can think of 3 assumptions right now for your business? Take just a second. I did tell you we were workshopping. We've got some really good ones. I want you to write 3 assumptions that you currently battle. It can be anything from, here's something that I often hear. My expertise has been in corporate America. Small businesses and CEOs may not think that it translates into their business. Okay, does everybody have a couple?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. When do you think you want to battle this? When do you want to fight this fight of overcoming objections and removing assumptions? Brad, you look like you're wanting to chime in. I got to drag Brad in.
Well, I'm not sure I know how to answer the question. I think the way that I tend to try to overcome objections is by asking questions and trying to get people to explain why they feel a certain way.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And then
Excellent.
trying to address that probably with a case study or a story or an example of something to diffuse that.
Which is fantastic if they engage in the first place. And the challenge so often with the initial interaction that people have with you, and your initial interaction may come about with shaking someone's hand at a networking event and spending 2 minutes with them, and they make a judgment call or have that first impression that says, this is someone that can help me, or this is out of my budget, or this is out of my league. People make judgments quickly, and that's part of the reason why I like to encourage you to think about how people view you and leverage this approach so that even from the 30-second commercial on, from your headline on LinkedIn, from your about section on LinkedIn, from your website, everything, this is where all of this fits in. So if you think about removing assumptions, there's a very wise mentor once told me, if you feel like there's going to be a fight, fight up front. So in other words, remove the assumptions and get people thinking differently about who you are and why they want to talk to you. So this is part of the reason why I encourage you to think about leading with almost a value statement of what is the possibility in building a relationship with you. And when you look at your assumptions that you just listed there, those could end up being the foundation for many of your stories, your case studies, your message points, because those are pain statements. And they may be, if you think about it, the pain statement is not your pain, but it's what people experience through not having you. Okay? So let's keep talking about this, because oftentimes when you think about where this fits in, people talk about, all right, so how am I going to actually tell a story when I don't have any clients? Maybe you haven't worked with anybody before. So what I'm going to encourage you to think about is how you have achieved some incredible transformations throughout your career. And I want you to think about when that happened. So we've got our list of assumptions, right, that people make about us. Now we're going to start another list where we're going to talk about the career wins or achievements. And then we're going to pull some different things together, and I'm going to show you how to craft some very compelling narratives, as long as I don't lose electricity between now and then. I don't know, we're having us a toad strangler here, as we call it in the Midwest. Okay. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about some career wins. Tell me, okay, who have I not heard from? Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl, good to have you with us today. Are you available to come off mute and have a conversation?
I am.
Okay, fantastic. Tell me professionally, within your career roles, and welcome to the session today, by the way. Tell me about one of the most significant challenges that you have helped your employer overcome.
Well, I have several acquisitions, both on the acquiring side and on the acquired side. And
Okay.
the I think the most challenging was an acquisition where we were the company I was working for was acquired after having gone through an acquisition just a year prior. So our not just the accounting team, but everyone in the company was a little tired.
Okay.
And the acquiring company really had no regard for any of the employees. They were not going to give us any kind of notice. They were just going to use us until the end. And I had to go to the CEO and help explain why that wasn't such a good idea, even though it was 2009 and we were in the midst of the downturn. And through that process, I was able to negotiate, at least for the accounting team, some stay bonuses and lead a successful integration from the acquired side.
How did you do that?
How did I do which part?
The overcome that challenge. You negotiated something that in the beginning they had no concept or clue as even a possibility.
Well, the CEO really, like I said, the CEO had no regard or just completely disregarded the employees from the company that was being acquired. He thought it would, because it was 2009, nobody would leave because there weren't any jobs, but in Arizona where I'm at, that really wasn't the case. And we were talking about a 6-month period of time. And so, I explained to him that that wasn't the case and that in Arizona, there was still a good market for, accounting, finance employees to leave. And it would end up being a big mess if they did that. And
How far into the acquisition did you have this conversation? Was it early?
very early. The deal had closed. Again, we were probably just a couple of weeks in.
Okay. That's a pretty good story there, Cheryl.
Thank you.
And that is, that is an example of demonstrating what you have the capability. It also does a great job of helping you identify the possible niches that you want to serve and where you would bring the most value. And that's the other thing that so many of your stories have. If you think about your career wins, you think about challenging situations that you have navigated. Think about implementation of new systems, software, integrations, any type of a initiative like a merger or acquisition. I mean, having the expertise to successfully navigate. I mean, knowing that, okay, Mark, help me with this. What percentage of transitions fail to achieve the desired result?
Oh, your M&A deals?
Yep.
Okay. Well, the old KPMG statistic was 80% don't meet their goals. Did you hear me?
80%.
Yeah, they don't really meet their goals. They have to struggle through them and make them work. I don't know if that's a current statistic, but it's been around for a long time.
Well, the last one that I had heard was over 70%. So I'd say it's pretty doggone close.
Good. Can I make another comment?
Please.
As you're thinking about your career, don't tell stories about stuff you hated to do. Because you don't, if you can do an ERP implementation, but you never want to do one again in your life, That's not, even though it was successful and all that, you probably don't want to start telling stories about that. So just thinking.
That is a really, really, really good point. Because there may be some of these things that you are very good at doing, but you don't like doing. It's kind of like I'm a really good sales manager on certain things that I absolutely hate doing with every fiber of my being. And it has to do with micromanaging details and reporting. I don't even want to do it. Don't ask me. But when I've done it before in my career, I've been good at it. So that's a really, really good point. The other thing that I think we often miss when you look at your career experience is we miss out on all of the, okay, so when you're hired to do a job, you're hired to do one thing, and that one thing is right here in front of you. But that one thing, you've got this whole periphery that you bring incredible value. And oftentimes your biggest value proposition is in your peripheral view. Okay? So if you think about it, this is where culture fits in. So this is where you think about, and this is something that, let's face it, in the accounting profession, much like engineers and accountants, it tends to attract people that are highly analytical and not always the best at building relationships and communicating. And to Cheryl's example, navigating very complex, stressful situations tactfully, but yet directly. Those are things that really differentiate you. And so I want you to think about, as you're crafting your stories, that is the selling proposition. That is your unique value proposition. That's what sets you apart from a lot of people that just want to do the job and they don't want to actually interact with people. Because if you bring that ability to work within a team and to develop a team and to train and support, now you've got something that becomes a competitive advantage. Productivity improvements. These are things, and this is really important too, that you put together in your stories. You have to think about what are the metrics around what you do that people can start to see, okay, I would like to have that. I could see myself experiencing that. And I don't know, is anybody in here a registered investment advisor? Okay, guess what? Then you're not bound by those SEC obligations. So you can certainly speak to results that you have experienced throughout your career and not get in trouble. Okay? Now, you also are going to have the disclaimer, of course, throughout your conversation. But you want to lead with something that helps somebody say, okay, that's the results I'm looking for. Because their results might be better. They might not be as good, depending on what their exact situation is. But people like to have those specific metrics. And then always revenue gains. When you have helped somebody achieve a pretty significant outcome, you want to tie it to what those revenue gains were. So for example, in business development, I am all about the numbers that matter to my clients are around productivity. The fact that I worked with an attorney that went from having 50 coffees a month to bring in $3,000 a month of business to having 10 coffees a month and bringing in $50,000 a month of business. And that was over a 12-month time period. So that gets people's attention when we share that story and that testimonial. So those are some of the things that I want you to compile and think about as we're pulling our stories together. Okay, now here's how we're going to take this information that we've talked about, and now we're going to start to put the pieces together for everybody. First of all, have I still got everybody? Have I lost anyone? You still with me? Now,
Yeah.
Okay, questions before I dive into this next part. This is a really good time for me to just kind of check in. Are you seeing where stories are going to fit for you? You're seeing how you're going to use them. Okay. All right. Now, one thing I want you to know also, your first story is going to be pretty awful. Okay. It takes a little bit of work to get it to where you want it to be. There's a little bit of polish. And then you polish it a little more, and then a little more as you interact and engage with people. But I want you to go out for a B- effort with your first story when you're putting together your examples, your 30-second commercial, your case studies. Your goal with all of them is to get to B-. Are y'all with me on that?
I
'Cause-
want to jump in here just a second. Whether
Please.
whether you're looking for fractional work or interviewing for a job, this is right in line with what Matt Budd teaches about interviewing, as far as that's concerned. So this is a skill set that's applicable throughout your career.
It also is applicable when you want to help people recognize what your contribution is to the team so that you're acknowledged. So this is a skill set that will serve you everywhere. So thank you, Mark. All right, now I want to give you the framework for how we're going to construct your story. So what I want you to think about is the fact that you are going to spark a transformation. And we like using acronyms. And the acronym that we're using is on the slide, and it is SPARK, and it stands for situation that someone was in, the problem that they specifically experienced, the action that they were taking, the results that were achieved, and the keep them engaged or the call to action. Now, let me give you an example. Mark shared with you at the very beginning that we have constructed a class that is called Freeway to Fractional. And during our beta course, we had a gentleman that approached us that knew he wanted to go into fractional, and he had already given notice, and he was on a 90-day transition plan out while he helped hire his replacement. His specific problem was that he had never even considered doing anything with an element of business development to it. And he was deeply concerned about his ability to actually keep his mortgage paid and his family fed as he got this thing underway. He participated in our beta course and followed the steps that were outlined within the first module to understand what his solution would be. And then module 2 to go intersect with his network and engage them to become his free sales team. The results that were achieved is by the time he transitioned into his new role, within 30 days, he had secured 3 new clients. And this was with a 4-month ramp up. So when you are looking for a proven path that will get you ramped up in your fractional role and to revenue, the Freeway to Fractional process offers you that framework. So I just gave you every element of a Spark story by telling you Joe's story. And that was less than 1 minute in how it was delivered. So what I want you to think about is this exact framework. Now we are going to put this together using you, your experience, and the results that you have achieved within one of your clients. And not clients, let's think about a role that you have had. Now, how many of you have been in a role longer than 10 years? Few of you? Okay. All right. So how I want you to look at that experience, it's not the entire 10 years, but what you're going to do is you're going to do a timeline within that company. And I want you to look at the significant events. So think about constructing a lifeline. And I want you to, in that lifeline, I want you to write down the year, date, month that there were significant events that took place within your tenure within that company. Maybe your tenure involved you were in 3 different roles within the company, or they transferred you within divisions. Each one of these is when you're going to look at each of those as separate engagements. Okay? Anybody have questions about how you're going to organize that? Are y'all with me? Okay, because what I want you to do is as soon as we wrap up today, I want you to actually hit your notebook and start crafting some of these to put them together. Because throughout your experience, you have accomplished some incredible things. And I want you to pull those achievements out and highlight them through your stories. So you're going to create a number of different spark stories. So if you think about one of those examples and one of those stories, and I would also like for you to think about it from the perspective of overcoming the objections. Remember we talked at the beginning about assumptions? So if you have a story that helps someone remove an assumption, that is one of the first places that you want to actually work on constructing your story. Okay, so this is where it's going to fit into your toolkit. So the first thing that you're going to define is the situation of the company you were in. And let me tell you something. People recognize problems and they speak in problems. They don't speak in benefits. Like people don't wake up one day and say, I need to hire a CFO. They may go to the bank and the bank is challenging them because their financial statements are inaccurate, outdated, or their ratios are out of alignment. Or they may say, you're not making any money. And yet as a business owner, you may say, but I kind of feel like I am. So that's some of the thing. If there's a disconnect between what you're seeing and what your financial statements are saying, that can be that trigger. So your situation needs to speak the language of what that prospect is and help define it. And then the problem is going to take that even further. So for example, in Cheryl's example that she gave, she discussed how navigating mergers and acquisitions, that was the situation. The specific problem was the business owner not recognizing the value in the existing team. So those were the specific problems, and she did a great job of outlining and defining the rest of those, the rest of that problem or trigger event. So the situation kind of helps describe that demographic information, but you've got to make sure that that demographic is situational. And this will keep you from getting, let's call it pigeonholed into saying, oh, Mark can only help me if I'm a big company. Or Brad is only going to be able to work with me if I'm a really small business. Or Marcus only works with people who look like this. So you want to make sure that you're speaking more to that situation, that people say, okay, I get that. Like I heard one of you during the initial statement, maybe it was Mark, that stated how you are great at helping companies that are pursuing funding because of your expertise in banking. So those are the things that you want to make sure that you speak to with your stories. Then the action, and this is where it gets really hard for y'all. I'm going to apologize in advance, but let me just tell you that ChatGPT is your friend with this. Because the action statement you are going to create, you get one sentence, and it really can't be a run-on. Because remember, it's really not about you. It's about them. So it has to help people put a bow on the story of you as okay, this could be doable for me. This is something I think I want to dive into a little bit more deeply. So that's how you would define the action that your perfect client, your employer, or your team took in achieving the transformation. Because remember, we're taking your corporate experience and translating it over into what you would bring to an SMB. Are y'all still with me? So we've got action and then results. You remember I was talking to you about productivity gains, revenue gains, improvement in profit margins. It's something that there is a quantifiable metric that people can wrap their arms around and say, ooh, that would be nice. I would like some of that. It's like me talking about the experience of when I started working with my client and they were having 50 coffees a month and making 3,000 a month, to when they were having 10 coffees a month and making 50 grand a month and having to push work down now to 9 attorneys because they don't want to do all that work themselves. So those are results that make people start to say, okay, this is why the value promise that Mark and I make is we reduce your path to revenue by 9 to 12 months. So it's quantifiable numbers. And I want you to be specific. And to keep them engaged is the call to action. So what is it that someone is going to do to initiate that initial conversation with you? And this is how you think about it. You're going to wrap it up and put a bow on it. So for example, Joe's story that I told you at the beginning, where I gave you the situation, the problem, the action, the results that keep them engaged is, so when you are wanting to fast track your results to revenue, we have a proven process that will shorten that path. And again, our numbers are by 9 to 12 months. But our goal that we really don't talk about as much, but Mark and I do a lot, is our goal is to get you to revenue within 90 days. And we have a number of clients that have achieved that metric. And then there's others that haven't because they don't want to work that hard. So that's the other thing that always factors into this, because you know what you can do, but you always have the client and their goals and their desires. Okay, so that is how you're going to construct Spark Stories. So where you use these lovely little tools is you are going to use them throughout your entire relationship building process. So from the initial conversations when you start networking, I want you to speak in stories. So I hang out a lot with attorneys. So I've got a client that his area of expertise is he leads an environmental law group within one of our very large firms here in town. They've got like 500 attorneys and they're all over the country. And I think they've actually got a London branch now as well. So regardless, everybody looks at Jim and thinks Jim only works with like oil companies and great big organizations. But what Jim found is when he brought Spark Stories and his example of one, people don't just walk around and understand Superfund and brownfields redevelopment. But that's one of the biggest pain points that he alleviates for manufacturers. So he began using Spark Stories by speaking about how he was working with one of his clients that was a railroad that had a number of properties that were sitting on their balance sheet, costing them money every year, but they were compromised and they were unable to actually sell them because of environmental challenges. So the action that Jim and his team took is they helped them identify programs that were available that would help them with not only the remediation, but also provide tax incentives and credits to the new purchasers of the property that would give them a leg up for development. The results, they were able to take properties that had been languishing on the balance sheet and actually get them off of their ownership so that they could move on down the road and the properties could actually be returned to useful purpose. So when you find yourself looking at some challenging situations with real estate, Jim is a fantastic resource for you to talk to help you navigate those challenges. Now, I know nothing about brownfields. I know nothing about Superfund. I know nothing about cleanup. But that story illustrates all of those very complex environmental matters and summarizes them in a way that has gotten him into some pretty cool opportunities. His most recent one was actually a manufacturer of batteries that's located in our market. So you see how this works? Okay, ask me questions. Because here we are. We wrap at 4:15, right?
Hey, sorry, Breandan, I got to leave in about a few minutes. I got a 9 o'clock. In
Okay.
about 7 minutes, another meeting. But awesome. I really appreciate what you have done so far. It's just has opened my eyes a lot. So thank you very much.
Okay. So what questions do y'all have, and are you ready to charge forward and get to work on this? So here is an offer that I'm happy to make for you. So when you get this recording, take a listen to it. Start crafting your spark stories. And then I will, if you connect with me on LinkedIn and reference this meeting, I'll send you a Calendly link and we'll schedule some time to brainstorm and refine your spark story. And let me help you put the polish on it. Does that sound like a good offer?
Yes, of course.
You'll like what you get out of it. I'm pretty good at this. Because I want to make sure that you take this concept and put it to work. And I have no doubt whatsoever that you're going to get it to that B-, but I'd love to get you to an A+. So we'll get you started and then we'll continue to refine the approach. So what I did promise, go ahead.
Little bit of housekeeping, because we don't really have a registration list for this. If you would like to take Breandan up on that, please put your email in the chat very quickly. That would help me a lot. Okay.
Yeah, otherwise we won't know who it is that we're supposed to connect with.
Right.
Okay, I did talk about selling against the competition, didn't I? Because let me tell you something that can be way cool. So we can't badmouth our competition, right? However, other people can do it for you, okay? So there is a concept that I love to use that's called circling the wagons. And this is where you create your spark stories, and you may also construct what is called a reverse testimonial. So a reverse testimonial is when somebody has been in a client before you or in your role before you, and they created a big mess, potentially because they don't approach the business from the perspective that you would bring. So Mark Lucier, can I use you for an example?
Sure.
Okay, so let's think about it from this perspective. So you have a background and experience from being within banking. Okay, so you've had to navigate compliance and a lot of really complex requirements that not everybody has. So where a reverse testimonial might fit in is where somebody would hire, let's say, an accounting firm or a pitch firm to help them construct their pitch deck and financials, but not come at it from the perspective of understanding the compliance required with acquiring or managing those different series rounds of funding. Okay, so there are little things about that I'm sure the devil's in the details, right? At least this is what my attorneys tell me. So this is where you can position yourself as apart from the just traditional accountant that may be able to prepare the financial statement that would be sufficient for going to the bank, but not sufficient towards going to a big investor. And you can bring it from the perspective of your experience in big banking that allows you, so that your action statement relates to your experience and what it is that makes you better than somebody that does not have your experience. Are you following me?
Not 100%. So basically you're saying because I've lived in big banking with all the regulations and all the everything that comes along with that, and also, you know, having worked at registered broker dealers, easy
Yes.
for me to say. There's a lot of constraints that come along with that, compliance issues. Now, notwithstanding that I'm not a compliance regulatory lawyer or anything like that,
Right.
you're saying apart from my ability to structure a financing and raise capital, I can help them navigate some of these ancillary hurdles that come along with that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what you would do is it's probably when you are actually putting together their financing package, there's a lens that you're looking at it from that somebody that does not have your background would not have that understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that can be a competitive advantage. So
Right.
that is an example of how you can use stories to overcome the competition. So when you're in there against somebody that does not have that background or expertise, that can be a story that you relate.
Right. A sort of an analogous thing apart from the regulatory hoops that I can, understand and view a situation through. Well, I don't know how relevant this is going to be for a small company. If they need to get transactions rated, and managing that whole ratings process is also something, as I'm just thinking out loud as you're talking.
Absolutely. And what about investor relations?
Yeah, I mean, my whole career has been about sitting in the middle of, the client who's paying your bill is the one who's the borrower or the issuer or whatever you want to call them. But you're a middleman, so you're a big part of this is managing those investors' expectations, managing their understanding of what it is you're selling. And then kind of bridging the gap between everybody's got a wish list on both sides of a transaction, but part of the value is managing those expectations and bridging that gap between unrealistic expectations on either side.
Absolutely. And that can be communicated in a story. And that's the thing that you want to do, is you want to leverage these approaches because stories are incredibly powerful at helping people see themselves in the role. It all has to do with this concept that is called the hero's journey. And it is the foundation for every narrative that is constructed. But when you have a story, your prospect is now able to see themselves. The thing that you want to be careful is the hero is never you. Okay. The hero needs to be your client. It needs to be your prospect. They need to see themselves in that role. So you need to speak about what they were able to achieve through you.
Brian,
Okay.
Can I ask Mark a question? Mark,
Please.
are you thinking about selling consulting work or project work or interim work, or you think about selling pure fractional, where you go into a business that's typically not big enough to have a full-time CFO and you work on a recurring 1 day a week schedule?
I initially my answer would have been, consulting, project type work, and because that's what I've been doing. But really, the reason I'm here today is I was speaking with Mark, and he was sort of like, kind of asking that sort of same question and drawing the distinction in my mind, which wasn't clear necessarily about between, what fractional means versus being a consultant or an interim person who comes in for a short time.
Well, the reason I ask is my experience is that most of the clients that we work with, and our business is 99% fractional. The person that we're talking to is not a professional manager.
Mhm.
They are a first or second generation entrepreneur, and they've never had a CFO before. And I would suggest it's a significant distinction, because again, my experience is that professional managers, which is typically consulting work or project work or interim work, buy based on facts, and entrepreneurs buy based on feelings and
Emotion.
emotions.
Yep.
And so I've actually found that changes the talk track a little bit. And while the stories are highly, highly relevant, we never lead with them. We lead with, and this Breandan's presentation is great because it talks about the story aspect, but there's a whole part before that about relationship building and asking questions and developing bonding and rapport. And honestly, 90% of the time I meet with a prospect, I never get to my talk track and I close the deal, because I'm letting them just open up, tell me what all their issues are. I'm just asking very short questions and getting them to talk and letting know that I really care. And sometimes we just close the deal by saying, we can help you, but we need to work together over the first 90 days of the engagement to figure out exactly what we're going to do. And so and maybe Mark can weigh in here, because I think it says, while the story is just critical, the story may not come until later. Most of our stories don't even come out until after we have the client. If that makes sense. And that's completely different than consulting.
And so is as what you're saying relates to me specifically, sorry, with apologies to the others, not to monopolize the situation here. But are you saying that that's something that distinction is something I need to be aware of when I'm talking to somebody, because that changes what I'm actually selling, consulting services versus fractional services? Or
I think it applies
as it
either.
relates to me, I'm not 100% clear on what I do with that distinction.
Well, see, I think they apply differently. And I think when you're selling when you're selling a solution to somebody, and it's an interim thing or a consulting thing or a project thing, they already come in with an expectation of what you're going to do, and they actually have some type of a solution in mind. My experience with the entrepreneurs and the fractional is they have no idea. They don't know. They just are dying for somebody that cares about them and takes an interest in them and really wants to partner with them to work together. And yeah, you've got to have credibility and all those things. But again, depending on how you get to the prospect, we get most of our clients by being introduced by somebody else. And when you're introduced by a banker or a CPA or an attorney, you actually have credibility when you walk in the door, or you wouldn't have been introduced. So we don't necessarily always have to play that card up front about what our skill sets are. Mark, I'm kind of curious what your experience has been.
Mark Blackton.
Yeah, I see both sides of that, Brad, and I really do appreciate what I think you're saying is listen more than you talk. Right?
Yes.
Listen more than you talk. But even though I go into places with experience, it's good. generally my sales pitch is more stories. Because they'll say, I'm dealing with this, and I've listened to them, and I give them a quick explanation of how I worked with this family and took them from X to Z and some of the issues that we dealt with. And, and it leads to more questions from my perspective. So I do use a lot of stories in my sales side of the business. It's really nice if somebody just comes in and says, yeah, we need help. Come in and help me. I haven't been that successful, but at that. So I have
Yeah.
to tell a couple stories to get people to understand what I do. And it's always a difference. It's a story that they should relate to. Right.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that my approach is they just buy immediately.
Right.
I walk in with 20 stories in my pocket.
Right.
And as I ask questions and they begin to express their feelings to me, I will use perhaps a different story or a different experience in each situation.
Exactly. And
Being
it's part of building
careful.
that relationship that you're talking about. I build
Yes.
that. That's what I was trying to say. I build the relationship through telling stories that they can relate to. So that's how I use stories.
Yeah, and you really don't know that until you've gotten them to open up.
Not at all. Not at all. I agree. But I never talk about how I do my work with a client. It's not, we're going to redo this and we're going to restructure that. And that's not really interesting to them. It's more focusing on the results at the end of the story, the value that was brought in a specific situation. And if they say, I'd like to, if they need a reference, I can introduce them to the person that had that story if that's necessary. So it's all about storytelling and concentrating on value, not process.
Yeah, and I think with I thought when you're selling to a professional manager, they just expect results right away. And we always talk about being trained killers. You just come in and you just swarm it all. But with a true fractional model, the other thing I think we all need to be careful about is making sure that people understand the expectations for how long things are going to take. Because when you're working true fractional and you're working a day a week, in 6 months, you've been on site 24 days. But in the owner's mind, you've been there for 6 months. And so sometimes, depending on how strongly we stress the results that we got, it may create an expectation that we have this, I always say, magic fairy dust that we can just sprinkle on a business, and in like 3 months, it's completely fixed. I mean, it does take time to fix some of these things. And it's just making sure they understand that and making sure the stories really match that.
That's good. Yeah, I never I'm talking, my stories are, I work with people from 3 to 7 years. And here's some of the results along that way. So I'm not at all promising, we're going to fix anything. I'm just supporting what you're saying, Brad. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. These guys, there's 2 types of clients, and you're absolutely right. I say this all the time with some of my team members. There's clients that know what they want and have a problem, and that's consulting work. And then there's people that just don't have a clue, and they need somebody to help them develop strategy, process, and people to grow their business. And those are the people we help as strategic CFOs on a fractional basis.
So I think the other thing that's important here, where the stories fit in, is I think one of the most important things we can all do in the sales process, whether it's talking to a referral partner, that attorney, banker, CPA, or talking to a potential client, is we have to learn to qualify quickly. Get to know fast, because if somebody is not a valid prospect or a valid referral partner, you don't want to spend a month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months trying to cultivate that relationship. And one of the things that we in our approach, one of the things we do is, if I meet with a referral partner and all they do is talk about themselves,
right,
I never talk to them again. I've completely disqualified them, Are they asking me questions? Are they asking me what I do? Are they asking? That gives me a chance to tell the story back, but I do it in a seeing if they want to draw that out, because look, we've all met with referral partners, and they talk for 40 minutes, they flip out the PowerPoint in the first meeting, and all they do is talk about themselves. So it is interesting to think about how you can ask the questions up front and see how other people react to it, to see how your story really plays into it instead of jumping into your story immediately.
Yeah, my favorite referral partner meetings potential are the ones where it's almost a competition to see who speaks the less, right? It's more fun. I learned that from the storytelling superstar over there in here. You really have to listen, ask questions, and you're absolutely right. If at the end of a 30-minute meeting, they have no idea what you do, why would you bother talking to them again, right? It's good.
Yeah, that's why you have a 15-minute Zoom call.
Well, that's cool too. But my favorite sort of story about people, you need an ace to win the game. You pull the jack and you keep trying to create an ace out of the jack, right? It doesn't work. And you spend a bunch of time telling the jack that he's an ace, and he's not. So you got to not mess with that and just move on and draw a card, find another one, right? Let's move on. So it's great. Breandan, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I would encourage you. So I'm happy to share the slide deck with you that walks you through creating your Spark story. Here's a few more thoughts for you to incorporate into where you use your stories. So to Brad and Mark's point, you aren't going to necessarily lead with them. You do want to use them to open the door to conversation. So where it fits is where you think about those assumptions that people make, and you can provide the story that helps people change their thinking. So we've tried it before. The cost was too high. I've got somebody internally that handles it. Whatever those objections may happen to be, this is where you can fit in your stories. The other thing also is it opens the door to help people think about just where and how you're going to fit into their world. So for example, to Brad's point, you can be in a conversation asking questions, and then people are going to get stuck at some point, because also many entrepreneurs don't know what the possibilities are because they may not have ever experienced what you can bring to them. So you can illustrate with stories to help them start thinking. So what I encourage you to do is take your career history and begin constructing your own Spark stories. And then we encourage you to have what we call focus group of one interviews, where you start to share these stories with other people for feedback on how you can improve them and get your messaging in alignment so that it is their language that you're sharing and not your own. It's all about what you were doing in terms of creating emotional equity during these initial conversations. So help people shape their thinking about their situations, their problems, and how you can help them. Make sure that you leave a good footprint by bringing value, and then also ask the hard questions about where do you think this doesn't fit? Make sure that you're asking them to tell you where your baby's funny, is dressed funny, so that you can, improve. Because, people aren't going to want to tell you that your baby's ugly. So he's not ugly. Maybe you're just dressing him a little odd, and they can help you with making sure that you just refine that approach. I want you to go get to revenue. I want you to take these ideas, these concepts, make a difference in what you're doing right now, help articulate what it is that makes you different than others, and let me know how I can help you on your journey. we're delighted. We're here to support fractionals. Mark and I are evangelists for fractionals, and we love to help people understand the possibilities in this approach. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today. It's been delightful. And I'll turn things back over to y'all.
Well, we're at the end of our time, but we want to remember to invite everyone to the meeting that we're having tomorrow, where we're talking about 4 things you should know about fractional services. And you can find that at the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, on the website of FANG. Otherwise, thank you all for being there. Thank Cheryl and Mark for hanging in there to the end, and we'll talk to you soon. Brad, any closing words?
No, I just say, Cheryl and Mark, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to Breandan or Mark or Marcus and I. We're happy to help however we can. So
Fantastic.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.